The Valdorian Imperial Academy had never made a mistake in its 3,000-year history. Its quantum selection algorithms processed millions of applications across 700 species, choosing only the elite, those destined to become the galaxy's finest warriors, diplomats, and leaders. When Genesis Carter's acceptance letter materialized on her outdated Earth terminal, everyone assumed it was a cosmic joke. She wasn't supposed to be there. Humans were barely aware of the galactic community, their primitive vessels having only just breached their own solar system. The Academy's standards were absolute. Candidates needed molecular density 3 times that of baseline humans, neural processing speeds that defied Earth's biological limitations, and gravitational resistance that would crush a human into paste. Genesis was 5'3", weighed 50 kilograms, and had failed her high school physics exam twice. "This has to be an error," Headmaster Krolfin rumbled, his crystalline carapace flickering with irritation. The insectoid administrator loomed over his desk, mandibles clicking as he reviewed Genesis's file for the 100th time. A clerical impossibility. She shouldn't have survived the transport shuttle alone. But Genesis had survived. More than that, she'd smiled the entire way, pressing her face against the viewport like a child at an aquarium, while her Thraxian shuttle mates clutched their restraints in terror during a routine gravity transition. Thomas Reeves, a second-year student from Earth's recently established colony on Mars, watched her arrival with a mixture of horror and fascination. He'd been the Academy's only human, a genetic anomaly born under Mars's unique radiation conditions that had enhanced his physiology just enough to meet minimum requirements. He'd spent 2 years proving that humanity deserved a seat at the galactic table. Now this girl was going to destroy everything he'd built. "You can't be here," Thomas hissed, cornering Genesis after orientation. Around them, massive Urgathai warriors lumbered past, each one capable of juggling tanks. "Do you understand what this place is? The entrance exam is in 3 days. The physical trial alone will kill you." Genesis tilted her head, brown eyes sparkling with something Thomas couldn't quite identify. Naivety? Madness? "They accepted me," she said simply. "I'm going to try." The trials began at dawn. The first test was simple, a 10-kilometer run across the Academy's training grounds, where gravity could be adjusted to match any planetary condition. The course was set to 4.2 g, standard for the average Academy student, absolutely lethal for unenhanced humans. Thomas watched from the observation deck as Genesis took her place at the starting line, dwarfed by the towering aliens around her. He'd pulled every string to be here, needing to witness the moment when reality would finally break through her delusion. The medical team stood ready. Her death would be quick, at least. The klaxon sounded. Genesis didn't run. She couldn't, not in the traditional sense. Under 4.2 g, each step was an act of defiance against physics itself. Her bones should have shattered, her organs pulped, her cardiovascular system collapsed. Instead, she walked 0.1 step, then another. Her face turned red, then purple. Blood vessels burst in her eyes. Every breath was a rattling gasp that the audio pickups transmitted with crystal clarity. Beside her, a Kralix warrior, bred for heavy world combat, maintained an easy loping pace. Behind her, students who'd spent their entire lives preparing for this moment surged ahead. "She's going to die," someone muttered. Genesis fell to her knees at the 2-kilometer mark. Thomas closed his eyes. It was over, but then she stood up. The Valdorian proctor monitoring her vitals made a sound no one had heard before, confusion bordering on alarm. "Her body is adapting," he whispered. "In real time. This is impossible." Genesis's steps became steadier. Her breathing, while still labored, found a rhythm. At the 5-kilometer mark, she passed a Silurian cadet who'd collapsed. At 7 kilometers, her gait almost resembled a jog. The other students had finished and were staring at the monitors in stunned silence as this fragile human girl, this error, this mistake, refused to quit. She crossed the finish line 47 minutes after everyone else, collapsed, vomited, and then laughed. "That was horrible," she gasped. "When's the next one?" Over the following weeks, Genesis failed every test by conventional metrics. She was the slowest, the weakest, the most frequently injured. But she never quit. Not during the 0G combat trials where she was thrown around like a rag doll. Not during the tactical simulations where her human reaction times left her constantly outmaneuvered. Not during the strength assessment where she could barely lift a fraction of what was required. What terrified Thomas, and gradually everyone else, was that she got better, not incrementally, exponentially. Humans, they discovered, had an evolutionary trait that other species had optimized away: adaptability. In a galaxy where species evolved for specific niches, humanity had evolved for chaos. Their bodies were learning machines, constantly rewriting biological code on the fly. Genesis's bone density increased by 15% in her first month. Her neural pathways restructured themselves, finding efficiencies that shouldn't exist. Her cardiovascular system developed new capillary networks that baffled the medical staff. She was becoming something more than human, driven by nothing but stubbornness and an insane refusal to acknowledge impossibility. By the end of the semester, Genesis placed in the top 30% of her class. Not through superiority, but through the sheer bloody-minded determination that defined her species. She'd been broken and rebuilt so many times that her body had forgotten how to quit. Headmaster Crowthen called Thomas to his office. "You understand what she represents," the old warrior said. "The Academy didn't make an error. The quantum algorithm saw something we didn't. It saw potential. Your species doesn't have the strongest bodies or the fastest minds. But you have something more valuable. What's that? You're too stupid to know when you're beaten." Thomas found Genesis in the medical bay, recovering from that day's training. Her body was a roadmap of bruises and healing fractures. She grinned when she saw him. "I think I'm getting the hang of this," she said. Thomas sat beside her and, for the first time since her arrival, smiled back. "Yeah," he said, "I think you are." The galaxy had accepted humanity by error. Now it would have to deal with what that error had unleashed: a species that looked at impossibility and decided to try anyway.